My name is Alyssa Monroe. I'm 34 years old. And I didn't know my relationship was already cracking until the moment my boyfriend showed up at my door, shaking, eyes red, voice breaking, carrying news that was supposed to bind us forever. He didn't knock. He used the key. That alone should have warned me something was wrong. I'd just gotten home from work, heels kicked off, blazer draped over the back of a chair, still half living in spreadsheets and emails, when the door opened and Daniel stepped inside like he didn't trust himself to be alone with whatever he was carrying. His face was blotchy, not just emotional, panicked. "What happened?" I asked immediately, standing. "Are you okay?" He didn't answer, just crossed the room and wrapped his arms around me, burying his face against my shoulder like the floor might fall out from under him if he didn't hold on. I held him back automatically, my brain already racing ahead. Someone died. He lost his job. There was an accident. It took almost a full minute before his breathing slowed enough for words. "I'm late," he said finally, voice cracking. I pulled back slightly. Late for what? He looked at me then, really looked. Eyes glassy, jaw trembling, fear mixed with something else I couldn't name. "My period," he said. For a second, the words didn't register. My brain tried to reject them on a biological level. Then he clarified. "I'm really late. I took a test this morning." He swallowed. It was positive. The room tilted. "You're saying you're pregnant?" I asked carefully. He nodded, tears spilling over. "You're going to be a mom." I guided him to the couch and sat beside him, my pulse loud in my ears. A baby. We'd been together almost 2 years. Serious, but not rushed. Separate apartments, shared routines, weekends that blended together. Conversations about the future that felt real, but not urgent. This wasn't supposed to be part of the plan yet. "Are you sure?" I asked gently. Home tests can be wrong sometimes. "I took 3, he said quickly. All positive." I leaned back, staring at the wall, forcing myself to breathe. Then the part of me that handles crises, the part trained to slow panic into logic, kicked in. "Okay," I said. "Then let's do this properly. Let's go to a clinic, get a blood test, confirm everything." The change in him was immediate. His body stiffened, his eyes widened, not with relief, but fear. "What? Why?" he asked too fast. "Because this is huge," I said calmly. "A blood test will confirm it. Tell us how far along you are. We need facts before making life-changing decisions." "I don't need a blood test," he snapped. "I know my body." "And a blood test will confirm exactly that," I replied, watching him closely. "So what's the problem?" He stood abruptly. "The problem is you don't believe me." "I want medical confirmation," I corrected. "That's not the same thing." He stared at me for a long moment. Something flickered across his face. Panic. Calculation. "Fine," he said stiffly. "We'll go." But the way he said it told me something had already gone wrong. That night, he didn't stay over. He said he needed space. And as I stood alone in my apartment after he left, a quiet thought settled into my chest, heavy and cold. This wasn't fear of becoming parents. This was fear of being caught. Friday afternoon came faster than I wanted it to. Not because I was eager to hear the truth, whatever the truth was, but because the waiting had its own cruelty. Every hour between Wednesday night and Friday felt like a test I hadn't agreed to take. Daniel barely texted Thursday. When he did, his messages were short, oddly polite, like he was speaking to a coworker instead of the woman who was supposedly about to become a mother with him. "Daniel, feeling tired. Don't worry." Me, "We'll talk after the appointment. I'm here." Daniel, "Okay." That okay sat in my chest like a stone. On Friday, I left work early and drove across town to pick him up. I expected him to be emotional, maybe even relieved that we were finally doing something concrete. Instead, when he got into the passenger seat, he looked like someone walking into court. Hair slightly messy, hoodie pulled up even though it wasn't cold, hands gripping his phone like it could save him. "You okay?" I asked. "Just nervous," he said, eyes fixed out the window. "It'll be fine," I told him, keeping my voice steady. "Whatever the results are, we handle it together." He nodded, but it didn't reach his eyes. At the clinic, the air smelled like disinfectant and quiet anxiety. People trying to look calm while their lives hung on paperwork and fluorescent lighting. At the front desk, they handed Daniel a clipboard. I watched his hand shake slightly as he wrote, not from excitement, not from fear of parenthood, from fear of something else. And when he got to the question, date of last menstrual period, he hesitated. He wrote something, then scratched it out, then wrote something different. I didn't say anything. I just watched. The nurse called his name, and we followed her down a hallway that felt longer than it should have been. Inside the exam room, the nurse spoke with practiced warmth. "So we're doing a quantitative HCG blood test today. Results usually come back in 24 to 48 hours. Daniel nodded too quickly. If it's positive, the nurse continued, we can also schedule an ultrasound to confirm how far along you are. Daniel's head snapped up, sharp as a reflex. No, he said immediately, too loud. The nurse blinked. No ultrasound? Just the blood test, Daniel repeated, voice tighter now. The nurse glanced at me. Just a quick professional look, the kind that says, is this normal for you? But she didn't push. Okay, she said lightly. Whatever you're comfortable with. They drew his blood. He didn't look at the needle. He didn't look away either. He stared at the wall like he was bracing for impact. When it was over, he exhaled like someone finishing a sprint. Back in the car, Daniel stayed silent for several minutes. Finally, he asked, when will they call? They'll email the results, I said. Probably Sunday, maybe Saturday night. His fingers tightened around his phone. They'll email me, right? I turned slightly to look at him. They'll email whoever is registered to the patient portal. He swallowed. Right. Then, softer. But you gave your email too, didn't you? I paused. At the front desk, they'd asked for contact info. Daniel had hesitated, again, and I'd stepped in automatically, like I always did when someone froze under pressure. Yeah, I said carefully. I did. They said they could send appointment confirmations and portal access to a contact email too. Daniel's face went pale in a way that had nothing to do with blood loss. I didn't know they'd do that, he whispered. Something in me went quiet. Not angry yet, not even afraid. Just alert. That night, he didn't stay over again. I need to sleep in my own bed, he said, avoiding my eyes as he stood at my door. I wanted to reach for him. I wanted to say the soft thing, the reassuring thing. But my instincts, my deep, old instincts, kept whispering the same sentence. He's not afraid of becoming a dad. He's afraid of being exposed. Saturday was worse. He barely responded to me at all. When he did, his replies were delayed and dry. Me. Want me to come over? Daniel. Not feeling well. Me. We can talk. I'm worried. Daniel. Please just wait for results. It wasn't the words. It was the tone. Like he was managing me. Like I was a variable he needed to keep stable until the data came in. By Sunday morning, I woke up early without meaning to. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and my apartment was still, quiet in that way that makes your thoughts sound louder. Then my phone buzzed. An email notification. From the clinic's patient portal. My heart kicked hard like it already knew. I sat up in bed, blinking at the screen. The email wasn't addressed to Daniel. It was addressed to me. For a second, my brain tried to make it make sense. Maybe they sent it to both of us. Maybe this was just an account confirmation. Maybe. But when I clicked, it took me straight to the portal. And there, in black and white, was the lab report. Quantitative HCG, negative. Result, 5.0 MIU ML. Interpretation, not pregnant. I stared at it so long my eyes started to burn. Negative, not pregnant. But I could still hear his voice from Wednesday night, shaking, tearful, fragile. You're going to be a mom. And I could still see his hands when he showed me the home tests. 3 little sticks lined up like proof. I read the report again and again. Like repetition could change the meaning. It didn't. A strange calm settled over me. Not relief, not joy. A cold, surgical clarity. I took a screenshot. Then I stared at my ceiling, trying to find the exact moment my life split into 2 versions. Before and after I knew the truth. The next thing I did wasn't dramatic. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone. I called Daniel. He didn't answer. I called again. It went to voicemail. On the 3rd call, he picked up on the 4th ring. His voice was groggy, like he'd been asleep. Hello? He mumbled. The clinic emailed the results, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Silence. I could hear his breathing on the other end, shallow and fast. Then he asked, too softly, what did it say? I let the pause stretch, long enough for him to understand what this was. Why don't you tell me what you think it said? I replied. More silence. And in that silence, I heard it. Not sadness. Not fear of losing a baby. Fear of losing control of the story. Daniel, I said quietly, you're not pregnant. His breath hitched. That's impossible. Blood tests don't lie, I said. But people do. A sound came from his throat, half sob, half choke. I don't know, he stammered. Maybe they made a mistake. I leaned back against my headboard, eyes narrowed, voice still calm. Do you want to try again? I asked. Or do you want to tell me the truth? He didn't answer. I spoke anyway. I'm coming over, I said, 20 minutes. He whispered, Alyssa, please. I ended the call. My hands were steady as I got dressed, but my mind wasn't, because now there were only 2 possibilities, and both of them were ugly. Either Daniel had staged the entire thing, or Daniel had staged it because he wasn't sure I'd stay otherwise. And the worst part? Both options meant he'd looked me in the eyes and cried, on purpose. I drove to his apartment with the screenshot sitting on my passenger seat like a weapon I never asked to carry. And the closer I got, the more one thought kept looping through my head. He never expected me to see that email, which meant he'd planned to tell me something else, something worse, or something sweeter, something that would have trapped me inside a lie so convincing I might have built a life on it. I parked outside his building, took a breath, and walked toward his door, already knowing that whatever I was about to hear would change the way I trusted people forever. Daniel answered the door on the first knock. That alone told me he hadn't been asleep. He looked worse than he had all week, hair unwashed, eyes red and swollen, shoulders slumped like gravity had doubled overnight. He was wearing old sweatpants and a faded t-shirt I recognized, one I'd bought him years ago. We stood there for a moment, staring at each other like strangers who shared too much history to pretend this was casual. "Can I come in?" I asked. He stepped aside without a word. His apartment smelled stale, like someone who hadn't opened a window in days. We sat on opposite ends of the couch. The space between us felt deliberate now, measured, defensive. I didn't ease into it. "Talk," I said. He stared at his hands, fingers twisting together until his knuckles went white. "I don't know where to start," he whispered. "Start with the truth," I said evenly. "Were you ever pregnant?" His shoulders collapsed. He shook his head. Slow, defeated. "No." The word hung in the air, heavy and final. I nodded once. I'd already known, but hearing it still hurt in a way that settled deep, not sharp, like something bruised instead of cut. "The tests," I said. "How did you fake them?" "I didn't fake them," he said quickly, panic creeping back into his voice. "They were real." I looked at him. "Then explain." He swallowed hard. "I bought them." The silence stretched. "You bought them," I repeated. He nodded, eyes glossy now. "From someone online." It took a second for my brain to catch up. "Explain that sentence," I said slowly. "There are forums," he rushed out. "Groups. Women who are actually pregnant will pee on tests and sell them. I didn't think it was a big deal at first." I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was so deeply, horrifyingly wrong that my body didn't know how else to respond. "You bought another woman's positive pregnancy tests," I said, "to convince me you were carrying my child." He started crying, full body now, shoulders shaking, face buried in his hands. "I was scared," he sobbed. "We were drifting. I could feel it. You were pulling away." "I wasn't pulling away," I said. "I was existing." "But it felt like you were losing interest," he said desperately. "And everyone around me is moving forward, getting engaged, married. My mom keeps asking when we're going to take the next step." "So you decided to lie," I said, "about something irreversible." "I thought—" He stopped, shaking his head. "I thought if you believed I was pregnant, you'd commit. You'd want to move in, maybe propose. I didn't think it would get this far." I leaned back, arms crossed. "You staged a pregnancy," I said calmly. "That's not thinking. That's planning." "I panicked," he cried. "I wasn't thinking clearly." "You researched where to buy fake pregnancy tests," I said. "You paid for them. You practiced crying. You reacted exactly the way someone afraid of a blood test would react." Each sentence landed like a weight. He didn't interrupt. "And if I hadn't suggested the clinic," I continued, voice steady but cold, "what was the plan? A miscarriage." He didn't answer. I waited. "Daniel," I said, "answer me." His silence was answer enough. "I don't know," he whispered finally. "I didn't think that far ahead." "You didn't think at all," I said, standing up. "You risked our entire relationship for a proposal." He reached for me. "Please, I made a mistake." I stepped back. "This wasn't a mistake," I said. "Mistakes are accidental. This was calculated." "I love you," he cried. "I love you so much." I looked at him then, really looked, and felt nothing. "No," I said quietly. "You love the idea of security. You love control. You love the future you imagined where I stayed because I was trapped." "That's not true. People who love each other don't do this," I said. I walked to the door. He followed, voice breaking, begging me to stay, to talk more, to give him time to explain. I turned once, hand on the doorknob. "When I suggested the blood test," I said, "you panicked. Not because you were scared of bad news, because you were scared of the truth." He collapsed onto the couch as I opened the door. I didn't look back again. That night I didn't cry. I sat in my apartment replaying every moment of the last week. His tears, his hesitation, the way he'd watched me instead of reacting like someone actually processing pregnancy. By Monday morning, the shock had settled into something solid. Certainty. This wasn't something I could fix. Trust, once broken this thoroughly, doesn't crack. It shatters. And I wasn't going to bleed trying to put it back together. I didn't block Daniel immediately. Not because I wanted to hear from him, but because I wanted to be sure. Sure that the numb clarity I felt wasn't shock. Sure that I wasn't about to wake up one morning and minimize what he'd done just because time had passed. By Monday afternoon, my phone was full. Daniel, please talk to me. Daniel, I know I messed up. Daniel, we can fix this. Daniel, I'll do anything. I read them without responding, each message making something inside me go quieter, not louder. That night, I finally sent one message. Me. We're done. Do not contact me again. I'll bring your things this week. The reply came instantly. Daniel, you can't throw away 2 years over one mistake. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. Me. Watch me. Then I blocked his number. Over the next few days, I boxed up everything he'd left at my place. Clothes, toiletries, a few books, the coffee mug he always claimed tasted better than mine. On Wednesday evening, when I knew he'd be at work, I dropped the boxes outside his door. I texted him from a different number to let him know. Then I blocked that one too. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. He created new social media accounts to message me, showed up twice at my apartment building, sent emails to my work address until IT blocked him. Each attempt made the same thing clearer. He wasn't sorry he'd lied. He was sorry he'd lost control. 2 weeks later, a number I didn't recognize popped up on my phone. Against my better judgment, I answered. It's me, Daniel said quickly. Please don't hang up. What do you want? I asked. I need you to understand, he said. I wasn't trying to trap you. I was scared of losing you. So you lied about being pregnant, I replied. That's literally manipulation. I know it was wrong, he said, but you have to understand the pressure I was under. My friends are all getting engaged. My mom keeps asking when we're moving forward. So you forced progress with a fake baby, I said. Do you hear how insane that sounds? I wasn't thinking rationally, he whispered. I was desperate. Why didn't you talk to me? I asked. Why not have an actual conversation? Because I was scared you'd say you didn't see a future with me, he said. And now there definitely isn't one, I replied. There was a pause. Is there any chance? No, I said, cutting him off. There's no chance. He cried, said he loved me, said he was still the same person. You researched how to deceive me, I said, my patience finally snapping. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern. I hung up, blocked the number. A month after the breakup, things finally slowed down. And then, at the grocery store, I ran into his mother. I tried to turn down another aisle, but she'd already seen me. Please, she said gently, just a minute. She told me she knew everything, that she was horrified, that she'd told Daniel he needed therapy. And then she said something I didn't expect. I don't blame you for leaving, she said. What he did was unforgivable. It helped more than I wanted to admit. 3 months later, the anger has faded into something like relief. I've gone on a few dates, nothing serious. I'm moving slower now, maybe forever. I still have the clinic email saved, not for revenge, for grounding. Because sometimes I still think about how close I came to building a life on a lie. If I hadn't suggested that blood test, if the results had gone only to him, if I'd believed the story he planned to tell, I might have comforted him through a fake miscarriage. I might have proposed. I might have built everything on fiction. But I didn't. The truth showed up, and I walked away.